Mina sat in her desk at the back of the classroom, her fingers tracing the edges of the blank sheet of paper in front of her. The soft chatter of her classmates filled the room, the sound of pencils scratching the surface of notebooks as they eagerly wrote their essays. The teacher, Miss Thompson, had given the assignment at the end of the school day: write an essay about your mother. It was supposed to be simple. After all, Mother's Day was just around the corner, and most of the students were bursting with stories to tell. Stories of family traditions, warm embraces, and homemade meals shared around the table. Mina listened as her classmates talked about the kind words their mothers always knew how to say, the way they comforted them when they were sad, or the way their hands felt so soft when they brushed their hair. But Mina had none of those memories. She sat there, staring at the empty page before her, the silence around her growing heavier with each passing second. Her chest tightened as she watched the other students scribbling away, their heads bent in concentration. She wished she could join them. She wished she could have something to write about. But no matter how hard she tried, no memories came. No words formed. She had never known her mother. She didn't even know what her face looked like. Mina had been an orphan for as long as she could remember. Abandoned as a baby, she had spent her entire life in the orphanage before being sent to the boarding school at the age of 12. The cold, sterile walls of the orphanage had been all she had ever known. There had been no lullabies to lull her to sleep, no arms to hold her when she was scared, no one to celebrate her birthdays or kiss her goodnight. And now, at 15, the ache of her mother's absence felt like a wound that would never heal. She gripped the pencil in her hand, her knuckles turning white as she fought back the tears that were threatening to spill over. How could she write about something she had never experienced? How could she describe the love of a mother when it was a love she had never felt? Around her, the other students began to finish their essays, some of them even sharing their stories with each other. Laughter filled the room as they recalled funny moments with their moms, their voices full of affection. Mina bit her lip, feeling the sting of jealousy and sorrow wash over her. She had never wanted anything more in her life than to be like them. To have a mother. To be loved. Her eyes burned, and before she could stop herself, tears began to fall, landing softly on the blank sheet of paper in front of her. The drops of sadness blurred the page, staining it with the pain she had carried with her all these years. She had nothing to write. Nothing to offer. Just an empty, aching heart and a lifetime of unanswered questions. She wiped her eyes quickly, hoping no one would notice, but it was too late. Miss Thompson had already seen the glisten of tears on her cheeks. The teacher's kind eyes softened, and she slowly approached Mina's desk. Mina lowered her head, ashamed of the blank paper before her. She had failed the assignment. She had failed herself. And now, she had nothing to hand in but the evidence of her sorrow. Miss Thompson knelt beside her desk, her voice gentle as she spoke. "Mina," she said softly, "you don't have to write anything, sweetheart. It's okay." Mina couldn't hold back the sobs that escaped her lips. She wanted so desperately to be able to do what the other students had done. She wanted to write about a mother's love, to have stories to tell, but she couldn't. How could she? She didn't even know what her mother's voice sounded like, what her touch felt like. She had nothing. "I'm sorry," Mina whispered through her tears, her voice barely audible. Miss Thompson didn't say anything more. Instead, she gently wrapped her arms around Mina, pulling her into a hug. It was the first time Mina could ever remember being held like that. She melted into the embrace, the warmth of it filling the cold, empty spaces in her heart, even if just for a moment. "It's okay, Mina," the teacher whispered. "It's okay." For the rest of the day, Mina couldn't shake the feeling of shame and sorrow that clung to her. She had handed in a blank paper, her tears the only marks left behind. While the other students had turned in their essays with pride, Mina had nothing to show for her efforts. But Miss Thompson had understood. She had hugged her when Mina needed it the most. And for the first time in her life, Mina felt seen. As the years passed, Mina continued to struggle with the loneliness that had defined her childhood. She remained at the boarding school, watching her classmates leave for holidays and weekends, running into the arms of their parents. Mina, however, always stayed behind. The dormitory felt even more hollow during those times, with only the faint echo of laughter from the other girls still ringing in her ears. She grew up in that quiet emptiness, carrying with her the weight of being different, of never knowing the kind of love her classmates had experienced. But one thing never left her, the kindness of Miss Thompson. That simple hug, the understanding in her eyes, had left a mark on Mina that she could never forget. It was a small act, but to Mina, it meant the world. It had been the first time someone had shown her true compassion. When Mina graduated from the boarding school, she found herself unsure of what the future held. She had no family to go to, no home waiting for her. But she had something else, a determination to give other children the care and understanding that had been so rare in her own life. She wanted to make a difference for kids like her, orphans who had grown up feeling unwanted, unloved, invisible. So, she decided to return to the place that had been both her prison and her refuge, the boarding school. But this time, she returned not as a student, but as a teacher. She wanted to be for others what Miss Thompson had been for her, a source of warmth, of comfort, of hope. Years passed, and Mina became known as the teacher who truly understood the struggles of the orphan students. She took special care with those who had no families to write about on Mother's Day, who had no one waiting for them during the holidays. She would sit with them, listen to their stories, and remind them that they mattered. That they were not alone. One day, as Mina walked through the halls of the school she had once called home, she passed by a classroom where a group of students were working on an essay assignment. She overheard the teacher giving instructions, "Write about your mother." Mina paused in the hallway, her heart aching with the memory of that day so many years ago. She thought of the blank page she had handed in, the tears that had soaked the paper, and the hug that had changed everything. Later that afternoon, a young girl, no older than Mina had been at 15, approached her with tear-filled eyes. She, too, had a blank paper. She, too, had no memories of a mother to write about. Mina knelt beside her, just as Miss Thompson had done for her all those years ago, and without saying a word, she pulled the girl into a gentle embrace. "It's okay," Mina whispered. "You don't have to write about something you've never known." The girl sobbed into her shoulder, and Mina held her tight, knowing exactly how it felt to be lost in a world that seemed to have no place for her. And as she hugged the girl, she realized that, in her own way, she was becoming the mother she had always longed for, one who offered love, even if she had never received it herself. And in that moment, Mina knew that she had found her purpose.